Maybe certain brands like Coca-Cola are trying to target the entire world. But I think the majority of advertisers are trying to reach a specific audience, namely the people who are qualified for or might possibly be interested in their products and services. So it's important for marketing and advertising teams to identify some of those tribes. Me, for example, I need to know more about the different personas of who listens to Data Skeptic. Some of you are still in school, some of you are in grad school, some are working. In today's interview, we discuss a tool called Tribe Finder and how it leverages Twitter data to help identify different tribes.
I'm Peter Gloor, and I'm a research scientist at the MIT Center for Collective Intelligence. I'm also the chief creative officer of a software company called Galaxy Advisors that is marketing some of the software that I develop at MIT.
And can you talk a little bit more, for starters, about the lab and what kind of research you're interested in?
Our lab is called the Center for Collective Intelligence, and it's basically studying how humans and computers can work together in ways that haven't been possible before the computer and the internet came along. These days, we are extending the term intelligence also to non-human intelligence. That means animals, bees. I have been very much inspired in my research by the swarm intelligence of the bees, ants, but we also look at other human companions like dogs, horses, cows, and so on. Most recently, we also look at human plant communication.
And I'd love to unpack that a little bit further. Is it that we're getting algorithmic inspiration, or is there like an industrial process that we're going to collaborate on with swarms and things like that?
The inspiration comes from artificial intelligence. I'm a mathematician by training. In the past, we had simple probabilistic behaviors like t-test correlations, regressions, and so on that could allow us to detect relationships, patterns between certain, let's say, a swarm of bees and where they are flying. But today, with AI, machine learning is so good that we cannot just predict whether a picture shows a cat or a dog, but also what that dog is trying to say with his body language, with the wagging of the tail. Well, you might say you know what the wagging of the tail means, but there is actually a lot of people that are very much afraid of dogs, have no clue of dog body language, and the computer can basically give us a Google Translate for animals.
Oh, very interesting. I wasn't aware of that work yet. That's fascinating.
Well, then I can also mention another one is even cooler, because a lot of people talk to their plants, and the plants talk back. And the way how they talk back is with their brain waves, which is basically action potentials, electrical current between leaves and roots, and also the way how they move their leaves. You might have heard of acacia trees that will send pheromones as warnings to other trees if they are being chomped on by a giraffe. It turns out all the plants do those sort of things, those sort of communication. And for a mimosa, we might not be better than a rabbit that wants to eat it. And so they will actually recognize us. It's like an EEG for plants that will measure the interaction of a human being with their house plant. And we can use that as a very sensitive movement sensor, for example.
Very interesting. Is this early days for that sort of research, or is it something that also has applications?
And then if you go to Google Scholar and enter my name and then just sort not by number of citations, but by date, then you will find papers about all the things I just mentioned.
Excellent. Yeah, we're going to have some good links in the show notes for sure. And I guess the main paper I invited you on that we'll focus on today is Put Your Money Where Your Mouth Is, using deep learning to identify consumer tribes from word usage. So certainly some overlaps from the methodology point of view, but now we're talking more about the text domain. I guess my first question would be, when did you become interested in natural language processing? What point did that intersect with your research?
That was actually 1991 when I was a postdoc at MIT in the Advanced Networking Architecture group, where I was building a system called CyberMap, which was an early web browser. Only in 91 there was no web. The internet was there, but no World Wide Web. CyberMap was actually creating graphical overview maps of large textual databases. And at that time, NLP was very primitive. It was basically just comparing strings and counting words. In a sense, that's what NLP still is doing today, only it's doing it a billion times faster, and not for 3 words, but for all the words in all the languages that are machine readably accessible. That's what systems like GPT-3 do, which are sort of the latest and greatest in NLP today. But I have been working on that for like 30 years.
Well, in that time, it seems like the field has gone through at least one major revolution, maybe a couple, but the one that's on my mind is the deep learning revolution. Can you talk a little bit about the impact it's had on your work?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, deep learning and AI, when I was at MIT in 1991, it was basically the dark winter of AI and NLP. A lot of people said it would never go anywhere. But the way of using, it's particularly on a technical level, GPUs for processing large matrices, large arrays of pixels, which can also be large arrays of words, and all the probability distribution that words in one language can have, and then compare that the probability distribution with the words in, let's say, Chinese. That's sort of the wonder that allows me to, right now it's still mostly typing into my phone in English in the hotel in Beijing, and then it will give Chinese text to the person at the reception. Now we are already there. It is that I can speak into my phone, but that needs more bandwidth that I might get in my hotel in Beijing. But conceptually, we could do that too.
You'd point out another major advance in NLP is the availability of digital data. Can you talk about how that's shaped the field as well?
Yes, that's one of the things which really enabled us to do the project that we are focusing about today, which we call the Tribe Finder. Now, the Tribe Finder has been inspired by Donald Trump because there is different types of realities. We have alternative realities, and what is my reality might not be yours. And people that are sharing the same perception of reality, that's what is called a tribe. And so, based on the words that a group of people use, they will define a tribe. And when we started the Tribe Finder, Mr. Trump was extremely active in tweeting. He was basically dominating the Twitter sphere. And so we could use his tweets and all the tweets of his followers to define his tribe, which we call the Fatherlanders. And then we used all of those words to create what is called a word embedding. And that means now we can take your invitation to this show or just any large piece of, not so large piece of text, 50 to 100 words is actually enough to tell you whether you are by inclination a fatherlander, or we have defined other groups. We have the nerds, that would be the Steve Jobs and the Elon Musks. We have the spiritualists, that would be the Dalai Lamas and the popes. And we have the tree huggers, that would be Greta Thunberg and friends. Based on your text, we could tell you to what percentage you are one of those 4 tribes.
Thanks to our sponsor, ClearML. ClearML is an open source MLOps solution users love to customize. It helps you easily track, orchestrate, and automate ML workflows at scale. Machine learning is no fad. Your organization is only going deeper on investment. Don't let this be a source of technical debt. ClearML can improve every step in your ML workflow, making it a tool loved by data engineers, ML engineers, DevOps people, and data scientists alike. ClearML is hands down the best collaborative ML tool with full visibility and extensibility. As a contributor on a machine learning team, ClearML amplifies your efforts. As a manager, ClearML gives you the transparency and metrics to guide your team's efforts effectively when you can't get pulled into the weeds. Their solution logs your entire process. Your data and models are versioned, so there's no questions of provenance or audits that can't be done. Model repositories give you a clear view of available binaries, and you can deploy pipelines directly from code. Supercharge your entire development process. Go check out ClearML today. Visit clear.ml to get started. Thanks to our sponsor, BBEdit. If you're a Mac user and you have any need whatsoever for a text editor, which, let's face it, that's got to be all of us, you have got to check out BBEdit. BBEdit 14 provides Mac users the most powerful, professional-grade text editor around. It's known as capable and rock solid, and can process files that are large enough to bring other editors to their knees. This tool's been beloved for over 25 years, and I can understand why. If I'm just typing up some simple hello world, I guess any text editor will do. But when I really get into the weeds and need to do some data processing, maybe I've got a big messy file, I need to find all the non-ASCII characters and remove them, BBEdit's there for me. It has best-of-breed multi-file search and replace and great scripting support for text transformations. There's a whole menu of text transformations that you'll find handy. If you're a serious data scientist or software engineer, you're going to bump into situations where you need a powerful text editor. So download and try BBEdit today. You can get it at www.barebones.com. See how much your productivity can increase. barebones.com and download BBEdit. And are those tribes something that you defined, like we take the taxonomy, if you will, as a given, or is that derived from somewhere?
Well, the sequence of things was, when we started, I didn't really know that those would be the 4 key tribes, and there is actually now many more different tribes that we have created. For example, we also have the liberals and the socialists and the capitalists. We have the YOLOs, you only live once, and the fitness buffs, the people that love traveling. And we can basically create any categorization of tribes, but the main key categories we created from the Wikipedia category tree, which we then condensed. But in the meantime, I got interested into the Indian caste system, where you have the warriors, the Brahmins, and the workers, and the untouchables. There is a really uncanny similarity to my 4 alternative reality categories in that they, for example, the warriors and the fatherlanders, they have a strong correspondence, the Brahmins and the spiritualists have a strong correspondence, and so on.
So then when you come up with a new tribe, does that have to be, even if it's coming from Wikipedia page associations, do you have to seed it with in the same way you described the Donald Trump's tribe, that obviously people who follow him are part of his tribe? Do you, for a tribe like capitalism, it's everybody who follows Bill Gates or something like that? How do you get it going?
Or Warren Buffett. Absolutely, yes. I would actually put Bill Gates, at least when he was still active at Microsoft, more into the nerd tribe, and Warren Buffett would be a capitalist.
Yeah, I wish I thought of Buffett. Better one.
But you are 100% right. We need tribal leaders. We need at least 100 of them, and each of them needs to have at least 1,000 tweets. And then we can train our system with their language and build a new embedding for a tribe. For example, we have also created tribes for beer lovers, wine lovers, canna lovers, and coffee lovers.
You'd mentioned being able to classify people into one of the tribes pretty effectively as well. I'm curious if you could expand upon that. It's not surprising that you might put me in the nerd tribe after just, one tweet or something like that. But let's say I was in the wine lovers tribe. It might take a while for that to show up in my stream.
We need more than one tweet. Otherwise, we cannot really categorize you. And also, you might just one evening haven't drunk too much, be full of price for a particular beer, but normally you are a wine lover. Anyway, the point is that we need at least 100 tweets or so of a person to be able to categorize it right. That's one point. And the other one is that nobody is 100% fatherlanders and 0% of the others. There is another categorization, which is my most recent one. It's basically about ethics and moral values, where we have the bees, the ants, and the leeches. And we train the bees with people like Linus Torvalds, Jimmy Wales and Tim Berners-Lee, meaning people that really have created new things and want to do good for everybody and are sort of the key competitive people. So that would be all the sports people, Tiger Woods and football player and so on. And the leagues would be the cryptocurrency scheme developers and hedge fund managers and so on. Afterwards, I can look at my own language, and it turns out I would have hoped I'm 100% B, which I'm not. I actually even have like 20% leech because I need to make a living and sell my books and get consulting gigs and sell my software and so on. And the same is true for fatherlanders because you might still be a proud American, but you are not a fanatic American. And so you will have a little bit of the fatherlanders gene, but you might be mostly a nerd, 80% or so.
Well, unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't seem like there's any notion of ground truth. These are sort of statistical associations that we develop. And with that in mind, I guess, how do you approach validation or the quality of the results?
By cross comparing all those tribal affiliations with ground rules from judging people by raiders. You can either take Amazon Mechanical Turkers, or yeah, in our case, we took students and we assigned them to tribes. In the paper that you quote, and in about 4 or 5 others, we have done a lot of this cross validation to verify that our tribes actually work. How this is done, I would, for example, take my Leech embedding, and then I would take the Celsius CEO and the Luna C and so on, all of those people, which from the outside one would assign to be a Leech, and then see what our system says. And it will say that they are 90% Leech.
And when you look into the discourse and the words and phrases being used within these tribes, do you see differences there across groups?
Yes, absolutely. Now, as you know, embeddings are sort of not human readable. So what we have to do, we have to use the old-fashioned bag of words, word counting, word cross tabulation, cross reference way of looking at the words that are assigned to different tribes, and then we can actually see that we get the right words assigned to the right tribes.
And in terms of new tribes emerging, do you have thoughts on how you keep things refreshed? Culture's always evolving. How do you get a new tribe introduced?
That's an excellent question because also people might change their personalities. And we really stumbled on that when Donald Trump was president and Greta Thunberg was in New York. You might remember that she was sailing there on a sailboat and she was giving some very fiery speeches. It turns out Donald Trump became a tree hugger, meaning that he is very good in appropriating or misappropriating words of his adversaries in his own speeches. And so, what we have to do, we have to constantly retrain our embeddings.
Is there any, I don't know, practical science to that, or is that just best practices for how often you train it? What's the general practice like?
It's basically every week. We rebuild the embeddings for each of the tribes in our Tribe Finder system, which is available online for people to try every week.
Could you expand on that? Where can people go to discover it and play with it for themselves?
The URL is Galaxy Scope. We call the tool the Galaxy Scope. GalaxyScope.galaxyadvisors.com. In the free version, you can build your own tribe and you can look at our predefined tribes by taking Taylor Swift or Barack Obama and see what tribes they have. Or if anybody who has a Twitter account with some tweets can get their own predefined tribes.
And what's the intended use for it? So I know my tribes. What next?
The main use is demographic research. So, for example, we can compare the BMW i3 tribe with the Tesla tribe. And we have done a big project where we have for 28 major car brands in the US compared the customer personalities with the brand personality of the car brand and then looked at alignment. And for example, we can then show that the car brands where the brand personality and the customer personality is better aligned are more successful in selling their cars. If there is misalignment, so the short answer is marketing and brand perception. Or we have that concept of the beer against the wine against the coffee drinker that was done for consumer research for some retailers.
Well, if I were in a marketing department, I have certain decisions to make. Maybe it's budget sizes or campaigns or demographics to target. This information should help inform those decisions. Do you have any insight into what those decisions are or how marketers use this data in practice?
One way is if you plan a marketing campaign and you would like to know what sort of brand ambassador to hire to recruit, then it will help you to do that. And another one is whether the products that you sell are actually aligned with the customer demographics that you intend. You can basically take any brand, then take the people tweeting or talking. You can basically take any large text collection. You could also take newspaper articles, blog posts, whatever has text, and then compare that with for example, if you want to sell Mercedes, do you offer your potential customers wine or beer? Our system would answer that. We can build a Mercedes tribe and then look whether Mercedes tribe members are wine lovers or beer lovers.
And I'm curious if you could share some details about what Tribe Finder looks like under the hood. You've already mentioned not just the ML process, but that retraining weekly. And since it's using Twitter data, there must be some crawling. It sounds like quite an engineering accomplishment. What all is happening there?
Yeah, well, yes, we are geeks. We are a group of nerds that builds this sort of stuff. What is happening there is basically constantly collecting the tweets of the people that we reconsider the tribal leaders. Right now, we assume that once you are in the, let's say, the B tribe, or once you are in the nerd tribe, you stay there. But you brought the example up yourself with Bill Gates. He might actually switch from nerd to being a capitalist, and then we probably would have to change his tribal affiliation, but we would still keep him as a tribal leader, of course, because he tweets so much. Although at second thought, I think he still, I mean, he tweets about his books and those sort of things. So I think he still makes a good leader for the nerds. That's actually, I think, where we have him. Under the hood, the system constantly collects the most recent tweets of the people we have identified as tribal leaders and rebuilds the embeddings, which is sort of the probability distribution of the words that the people are using, the tribal leaders. And when we take Kyle's Twitter account, it will take your most recent 100 tweets or so and match them with that embedding, and will give back a percentage of how much you are a fatherlander or a nerd.
And I imagine you've shown this to a couple of people. Maybe it's not double blind or whatever, but do you see any anecdotal responses? How do people usually feel about the percentages you uncover?
So far, I have never had any big negative surprises. They always thought that it makes a lot of sense, and also by cross verifying with those different categories. So that means, for example, you can either be in the alternative reality category, a fatherlander, but you can also be a wine or a beer or a coffee drinker, and then it should assign you the right category. And if it does so, then people believe it. No, the point with this sort of pattern analysis is that, let's say, 90 to 95% of what the system finds needs to confirm your underlying basic assumptions of yourself, and then you will believe the 5% which are surprising. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening with our systems.
We've talked about a couple of these tribes, like was it the Fatherlanders and people like that, or the tree huggers. I know these are going to be pretty applicable to a lot of companies. Do you envision a future in which you have sort of a library of these known tribes and people find the ones that are applicable to them?
Actually, if you pay, you get that. If you pay that, we have a very big library, which has been built over the last 2, 3, 4 years with hundreds of tribes that you can use. And it includes like things like the Ford and the GM and all of the car brands. Many brands are there, and also many consumer attitudes are there. Like, are you YOLO? Are you somebody who wants
Mhm.
everything? You know what YOLO means? You only live once. Also called carpe diem. Enjoy the day today. Or are you somebody who wants to have everything planned from day one? I can't remember how we call the tribes, but there is pretty fine tribes for all of those things.
And what happens if, I know this is a bad example because it's in your paper that you already have vegan as a category, but what if you'd never thought of that and a vegan meat manufacturer shows up and want to learn about their tribes? What's the process like to introducing a new one and getting that up to scale for your big library?
But that's actually a great example because our system would be confused if you have the meat lover and we have the vegan, and now we suddenly have a new category, which is the vegan meat lover. We would need tribal leaders. We would need people that are fanatic vegans and they are particularly passionate about meat substitutes, which actually I think most vegans are, because that's the way how they see they can save the animals.
And I definitely get the appeal of Twitter. It's a readily available, high volume data source. It seems to be somewhat universal, and we could debate that, but there's a lot of people on it, and maybe a lot of bots too. But do you have aspirations to look at other data sources?
We have huge aspirations and they are unfortunately unfulfilled because TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, they would be wonderful sources and they block, meaning you can only get small subsets against huge pay. So you have a single brand, but what we need is really we need cross comparison, otherwise our system doesn't work. And TikTok, for example, they are not fully closed, but there is an arms race of crawling the TikTok data and then building the index. And we have done that for small subsets, but it's not scalable.
Twitter's always been kind of open, the other platforms not so much. Do you think that that's really for privacy issues? You know, we're always going to remember Cambridge Analytica, or is it really more an effort to be closed platform, closed source kind of thing?
Well, I think it's both. It's the one way of generating revenue, which is selling the data, which because the Facebook data about BMW is hugely valuable to BMW. So they spend millions a year to buy that data from Facebook or Meta. And the other thing is, of course, have been burned by Cambridge Analytica. That goes for any Facebook, any Meta company. WhatsApp would be the best data source we could think in the world, but it's hopeless to ever get any data there.
Do you have a vision? I know this is a little off course, but for some more like open access, shared kind of platform thing. I don't know that industry would ever move in that direction, but would that be a good idea, or is that just a can of worms for privacy?
Well, we are also doing Reddit.
Hmm.
But Reddit is it's a passionate sub community, but it's much smaller than Twitter, and it's not so representative because it tends to attract the nerds. The other thing which we have done is you can, for example, take repositories like Archive, which is where we discovered our paper, and mine those for science trends. But it's commercial applications of that sort of system. We could also take PubMed for medical applications. I think pharmaceutical companies are already doing that, but it's still a much smaller application than the Tribe Finder, which is basically applicable to all of society.
And I see a lot of places Tribe Finder could scale. You could add, increase the library. You could maybe try new models, better deep learning, these sorts of things, or more data. What are the frontiers you're most excited about?
For me, it's the integrating different communication sources because words, text, that's what we have studied since 94. I mean, I'm now a research scientist since 2002, and I was a postdoc in 1990. And I have always looked at words and at networks. And today we have all types of sensors. We have smartphones with GPS locations. We have Zoom cameras that when we turn them on, would see your facial expressions. I would have seen how surprised you are. And combining all of those input sources will give us much deeper insights. It would tell me whether you are a real fatherlander. And we have built systems like that. For example, we have built a system which takes your facial response while watching a provocative video of Mr. Trump talking about the wall, about somebody mountain biking over a skyscraper, somebody killing an animal, a very scary movie of ghosts. And then if you watch that movie, I can tell you whether you are neurotic, open, agreeable, conscientious, whether you are fair, caring, hierarchical, traditional, and so on. So all of the things that we get from words, we get even more honest from your body language. And that's again the wonders of AI. And it's the same revolution for text, but also for other sorts of communication, and combining that, particularly in combination with trying to identify what sort of emotion somebody is showing. That's what we are doing these days.
There's a lot of concern in society about the degree to which people should be targeted or how much privacy we should have. It seems to me that tribal marketing escapes that because you're just targeting a tribe, not an individual of the tribe. Would you agree, or do you see any potential for concerns in abuse for tribal marketing?
Well, there is, of course, a big potential for abuse if you apply that on the individual, but we have always refused to do that. I learned that 20 years ago when I did my first social network analysis project with my mentor at MIT, the late Professor Tom Allen. And he told me that he will never ever give insights about an individual that he gained back to management. The only person who gets his insight is the individual itself, him or herself. And that's, we have done a lot of experiments, and this has always been my guiding principle. With tribes, it's the sort of insights that the brand gets. It will not get who is the biggest brand hater or brand lover, but it will get the general patterns.
And could you share a little bit? I don't know if you have any anecdotes or use cases, but how do some of the marketers leverage those results?
Well, I mean, sometimes I'm not very sure how they really use it.
Fair enough.
They want it. And then sometimes I would have done things very differently. Perhaps I can talk about this. It was like when we did that BMW i3 compared to Tesla project. And it was so obvious that Tesla was just what it is because of Elon Musk. And so the insight was very simple. At that time, Elon Musk wasn't as famous as he is today. It was basically hire an Elon Musk. And whether that Elon Musk is Roger Federer or somebody else, just somebody who is really would align extremely well and then is as outspoken, prolific, well-known, provocative, passionate, and so on.
Uh-huh.
But they never acted on that.
Well, that's too bad. Yeah, we won't know the counterfactual now.
Yes.
Well, I'm intrigued by what you're describing a moment ago, where you can not only take in text data but get a lot of visual information. I agree. If my network were running a little better, we'd be sharing more visual information with each other through the cameras. But at the same time, despite all the advances in both text analysis and image analysis, I'm not sure if we're ready to make the leap to these full video real-time systems. Do you think we're there technologically, or is that still a few years out?
Um, yes, I know. We are there technologically, but right now we just see the glitches because your connection isn't good enough to see each other's face, because then the interaction would be so much richer, because we would, I mean, that's one of the problems of NLP, of text analysis. It's not instantaneous. Computing your emotion from text, it's not your emotion, it's just your mood, your general feeling, how you have been feeling all day, or at least for much longer periods of time. Are we there for like meta style virtual reality interactions? Not on the high quality to make it truly credible. I still prefer flying to Sydney to experience Australia compared to putting on my VR goggles and walking around virtually on Bondi Beach. It's not good enough.
Earlier, you'd mentioned Galaxy Advisors. Could you talk a little bit more about what you do?
Galaxy Advisor is basically extending my insights of the last 20 years. Don't be a star, be a galaxy. And we help you to be a galaxy. And this basically is an extension of my main project at MIT of the last 20 years, which is called COINS, Collaborative Innovation Networks. And it's basically studying coins. Coins are about everything but coins. It's intrinsically motivated teams that create something radically new. And Galaxy Advisor is basically applying that coin theory using tools like tribe finders, because the coin theory has four components. It has the creator who invents a disruptive innovation. He recruits a small team of intrinsically motivated people. That's the coin. They recruit a larger team of what we call the learning network, which is friends and family of the coin. And that's the tribe. And then finally, we have the rest of society that adopts or does not adopt what a tribe is trying to promote. And Galaxy Advisor is basically building tools around that concept.
Do you have anything exciting coming up?
Yes, my new book, Happy Matrix, which comes out end of October. It basically describes Tribe Finder in a few chapters. It describes the coin theories. It describes how to become a galaxy. Don't be a star, be a galaxy. It also describes how to build a social compass, because to navigate in that tribal world, you need a social compass. And we have an app that runs on your phone, or it also runs on the web as a browser. You basically can just enter the URL into your Chrome browser on your phone or on the web, and then you will get your tribes, you will get your moral values, you will get your social network. It takes as input your email, but nobody is going to look at that email except AI. It does not leave your phone. It's just there, and then it will not take any words. It will not care about sex websites. It only tells you whether you are a bee, an ant, or a leech, how much you are a fatherland, a tree hugger, and so on. The URL is vm-sc for virtual mirror social compass .galaxyadvisors.com, and it's also free to try out.
Well, great. We'll have links in the show notes. I hope listeners will go over and check it out. And remind us one more time, the book and where to get it.
Where can you get the book? On Amazon, I would hope. Happy Matrix, it's a good word. I made sure I have a good word that you can enter into Google and it will take you there.
All right. Well, we'll have it in the show notes either way. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share your work.
Thank you very much, Kyle, for having such a fun, entertaining, and wide-ranging discussion.
That's it for this episode. Join us again next time when we explore maybe some of the darker side of advertising and data science. A rising tide lifts all ships, and I suspect that pretty soon there's going to be more advanced phishing attacks and spear phishing attacks going on.
Say, for example, this spear phisher had gotten access to somebody's inbox. From that point, they can train such a language model on these large amounts of emails that person can generate or write text like a human being and then conduct these attacks at scale.
That's next time on Data Skeptic Ad Tech.